Brilliant. Hey, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. Thank you for this webinar. You're welcome, Louise. Thank you for commenting. Yeah, this is actually a bit of a rerun. So I don't know if any of you who are here this evening came to Thursday's webinar last week or were unable to attend. We actually hit our capacity of 1,000 people, which was, as you can imagine, a bit mental. Show self view. I found it. All right, we're good to go. Yeah, and it's never happened before. We've never hit capacity on a webinar, so we decided it was if it was that popular, we'd run it again and give everyone an opportunity to join. We will be sending the webinar recording out tomorrow as well. So if any of you are wondering, I don't know, you've got dinner on the stove and you can only stay for 20 minutes or anything like that, we will be recording this and it will be available. We will email it to everyone tomorrow. Cool. So I think a few rounds of introductions are in order. My name's Robbie. I'm one of the registered nutritionists here at Second Nature. I also work on in the product and content team. So a lot of the articles that you all have on your app and maybe you've read on the website, I am responsible for those too. I'm also joined by Lisa, who is an expert in this topic, and I'm so glad she's here to join me tonight. And she came very last minute. I think, Lisa, I can't remember when it was, but it wasn't that long ago. I nudged you and said, "Could you please come and join?" Yeah, Lisa, would you like to give a round of introductions to everyone? And yeah, just a bit of your background, and you've got a really in-depth knowledge into this topic in particular. So I think it'd be really interesting for everyone to hear that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Robbie. Yeah, my name's Lisa. I've got a master's degree in clinical nutrition. I was inspired to go down that route, having helped my mum get into remission from type 2 diabetes. So yeah, I've been a coach at Second Nature for around 5 years now. And yeah, just love helping other people who are looking at managing their blood sugar levels, help reduce them and prevent or reduce their risk of developing type 2 diabetes as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. And Lisa will be joining me for the panel and the Q&A. So just to give everyone a bit of an outline of what to expect. So we do have a webinar we will start in a minute. We'll be presenting. That will last for about 30 minutes. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Now, many of you are already using the chat function, which is absolutely brilliant. We absolutely love seeing the feedback and the questions and the interaction. It's wonderful. So for all of the comments and any feedback you have, any questions, well, not questions, I'll get to that in a second, but all of that, the general stuff, please use the chat function to put that in, which all of you are doing already, which is absolutely brilliant. We do have for the Q&A at the end, there's a specific Q&A button, which someone's just found, which is brilliant. Which if you could put your actual questions into that Q&A, what we'll do at the end, because there's so many people, there's over 600 people now, we won't be able to answer every question that comes through, but what we will aim to do is broadly theme the questions together and discuss the key topics, basically. We've got a few things that were left over from last week's webinar that we want to address as well. And yeah, we'll try and get to everything. But for questions, if you want your questions answered, please put it into the Q&A. For all other comments and things like that, please use the chat function as well. That's absolutely brilliant. And just so everyone's aware as well, like we can't see or hear you. So if you've got dinner cooking in the background or your kids or grandkids are running around or your dog or whatever, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. We can't see or hear you. And obviously in the chat, keep it civil, be nice to each other. We're all here to help each other. So yeah. We don't normally have any issues in the chat, but yeah, let's keep it civil and pleasant. Right, cool. We will kick off. I will start by sharing my screen and I will start presenting. So I'll just move that down. Lisa, is everything looking okay on your end?
Yep, perfect.
Brilliant. Okay. Lisa, in while I'm presenting, are you happy just to keep an eye on the chat? And if anything is coming through consistently, feel free to interrupt me and say, Robbie, there's a bit of a theme on a few people asking about this or clarification on a particular slide. I will jump in and check as much as possible, but if that's okay, that'd
Yeah,
be
yep,
great.
absolutely.
Great. Cool. Right, everyone. And again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. This is a rerun of the Understanding Prediabetes and Type 2 Diabetes webinar. Tonight, you are joined by myself, Robbie, and my colleague, Lisa, who will be joining me for the Q&A and helping me out with the chat and the Q&A and all the questions and stuff like that, which is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so what to expect from today. Today, we're going to be looking at how prediabetes develops, how your body manages sugar and energy. We'll be looking at a theory known as the personal fat threshold, which is a bit of an explainer into how the body works and why people of different weights can develop type 2 diabetes. We'll be looking at the role of insulin, the hormone, and we'll be looking at a little deep dive into HbA1c, the blood sugar measurement, so you can understand that in more detail. Now, the goal of today, because we have we've had a long-standing relationship with the NHS and we've been running our diabetes prevention program since we delivered a pilot in Bristol in 2017, I think it started, or 2018. Um, and we get a lot of people joining, and when they're referred by the GP or their practice nurse, unfortunately, there's not a lot of communication or education around, what the HbA1c results mean, what pre-diabetes is. Is it different to type 2 diabetes? Am I allowed to eat carbohydrates? What's actually going on in my body? Many people living a healthier lifestyle, like currently living a healthy lifestyle, eating what they feel is the right diet and exercising, but still developing type 2 diabetes. So what's going on there? Now, we won't be able to answer all of these questions today, but hopefully today provides you with a good foundational knowledge to continue through the Second Nature program and understand your body better, and hopefully, get your blood sugars down over the long term. Okay, cool. So let's look at how pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes develop. So we'll start with a quick true or false question. Now, please use the chat function for this. So only the question is true or false. Only people who are overweight can develop pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. So put your answers into the chat. What does everyone think? I am going to get my chat up here. I don't know when I look at the chat if it's also in my shared screen, but if everyone can see their own things, apologies. But let's have a look at this. Excellent. Right, we're getting a pretty consistent false, and you're absolutely right. Thank you, everyone. That's brilliant. So yeah, it is false. So, um, based on survey data that we have, around 8% of adults in England who developed pre-diabetes were not overweight or obese, and they were within the healthy range of BMI, let's call it. We will be doing a webinar on BMI in the future, by the way, because it's not necessarily the best identifier of health, let's say, for an individual. However, it's quite a good. It's generally used. It's generally quite good for research such as this, for example, like population level data, let's say. But anyway, 8% of people who are diagnosed with pre-diabetes were not overweight or obese between the years 2013 and 2019. And Diabetes UK, as of January 2024, notes that around 10% of people with type 2 diabetes have a BMI in the healthy range, so they're not overweight or obese. So it's quite a large subset of people with type 2 diabetes who are within the healthy range. It's not 1 to 2%, it's 10%. It's a big chunk. So why is that? Well, it kind of goes against the historical view of how people develop the condition, and it kind of goes against the rhetoric that's generally in the public. People seem to think that type 2 diabetes is a condition that only people who are overweight develop, and this is how most people view it. You gain weight, you then develop the condition known as insulin resistance, which we'll be talking about later, and then you develop pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and higher blood sugar levels. However, we know this to not be true. Anyone can develop high blood sugar levels. As we've shown already, we know that people at any weight can develop the condition, anyone can develop insulin resistance, and anyone can develop high blood sugar levels over time. And Lisa, we've just hit 700 people attending the webinar, which is absolutely brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah, so in two webinars, we've had 1,700 attendees. So thank you, everyone. I just thought honestly, it's absolutely brilliant to see all of you here. And yeah, anyway, to the next slide. So how do we explain this? So before we talk about blood sugar and HbA1c and insulin in more detail, it's important just to cover the basic aspects of how the body manages energy, how it stores energy, how it burns energy, because then it will help to explain the condition later on. Because type 2 diabetes is effectively a disease or a condition where the body can no longer manage energy very well. So let's explain that. Okay, so let's look at energy regulation in more detail. So to start with, let's look at fat storage. So our body has this unbelievable pool of energy storage underneath the skin. known as our adipose tissue. Our adipose tissue is just a complicated term. It's just our fat cells, basically. It's the fat is that is stored beneath the skin. The skin that the fat you can pinch. You can pinch it on your arms, on your legs, around your waist. That's your subcutaneous fat, just your fat cells beneath the skin. It can also store in and around your internal organs. So this is more typically known as visceral belly fat, but you can get the belly fat that's just beneath your skin as well. This is our largest pool of stored energy. So fat is a very efficient way of our body. It's very efficient energy storage. Our body can store a lot of fat in a very small area. And even lean elite cyclists, so, elite cyclists who have 8, 9% body fat have around 100,000 calories of stored fat in their body. So it's an unbelievable size energy resource. Still, everyone has a personal limit to how much they can store. So this isn't an ever-expanding resource that can continue to grow. Everyone has their personal limit, which we'll be getting to in a minute. Now, our body can also store carbohydrates, but there is a limited resource. So all carbohydrates, so this includes bread, pasta, rice, added sugars, fruit, they're all stored in the form of something known as glycogen. Glycogen is carbohydrate, three sugar molecules or glucose molecules bound together. They're also bound together with water. And our muscles and liver act like sponges to soak up sugar or glucose from our blood to store them as glycogen in the muscles and in the liver. So there's two pools of carbohydrate storage in the body. Okay. But it is limited. So before we were talking about fat storage, and I noted that it's a very large resource, a very large pool, right? It's a huge suitcase, let's say. You can fit loads and loads of clothes in this suitcase. But everyone has their own personal limits. It changes. So one person will have one level, another person may have another level of fat they can store. But everyone, the general population, let's say, has a similar amount of ability or levels to store carbohydrate as glycogen. In the liver, it's roughly 400 grams of glycogen, carbohydrate. In the muscles, it's roughly 1500 grams. This does vary from individual to individual. It depends on your genetics, your muscle mass, your physical activity levels, but broadly speaking, we all have a similar amount of storage for carbohydrate and glycogen. Okay, so let's put this all together. Our body has this really large pool of energy storage with fat beneath the skin, known as adipose tissue. And we all have our own limit to how much we can store. But we all share a similar limited amount of energy storage in the form of carbohydrate or glycogen, it can be termed as well, in the liver and in the muscles. So this, put all together, this is the vast majority of our body's energy storage. It's in fat, in the fat you can pinch beneath the skin, and it's in carbohydrates stored in the muscles and the liver. Now, what does this all mean for blood sugar levels and type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes? So this is when we come to what's known as the personal fat threshold. I've already noted a couple of times that each individual has their own limit to how much fat they can store beneath the skin. And this is known as our personal fat threshold. Now, we all have a similar capacity, like I said, for storing carbohydrate in our muscles and our liver. However, we have an individual capacity that often determined by our genetics, but also our lifestyle, of how much fat we can store beneath our skin. Once this limit is reached in the body, the fat has to go somewhere. So if anyone can remember their basic science back in school, energy can't be, it can't just disappear. It can only be transferred. So when we have excess energy in the body, our body wants to store it somewhere. And if the body can no longer store it in our adipose tissue, the fat we can pinch beneath our skin, it has to take it somewhere. If we're not burning it for energy, we have to store it. If we're consuming too much, it has to go somewhere. So once this limit is reached, the body stores it in our internal organs. So it can't store any more glycogen or carbohydrate in the form of sugar in the muscles, that's full. And our adipose tissue, our subcutaneous fat, the fat we can pinch beneath the skin, if that maxes out as well, it then builds up in the blood and it travels to the liver, the pancreas. There's even evidence of fat storage in lungs, around the heart muscle. The body just has to try and store it somewhere. And this is a very negative thing for our health, but also this is why it can negatively impact our blood sugar levels. So the liver and the pancreas are key organs in managing our blood sugar levels. And when excess fat builds up over time, it can start to have a negative impact on our blood sugar levels because the liver and the pancreas are the two main organs that manage our blood sugar. Our liver stabilizes our blood sugar levels. So the liver is always, imagine it like a drip feed. The liver is always releasing glucose into the blood, or maybe not always, but it's managing the levels of blood sugar in the blood. When the blood sugar levels get too low, it will release liver. When we exercise, our liver is releasing glucose or sugar into the bloodstream for energy. It's almost like our blood sugar manager. And our pancreas typically is responsible for lowering our blood sugar levels because it releases the hormone insulin. Insulin is the hormone, hopefully, as we all know, that lowers blood sugar levels after a meal that contains carbohydrates. So these two organs are absolutely crucial for managing our blood sugar. So if we have excess fat built up in our liver and our pancreas, this negatively impacts their ability to manage those blood sugar levels. And as you can imagine, over time, the blood sugar can start to rise and rise and rise and rise. And obviously, this doesn't happen overnight. It's important to say this isn't just. So I think often when people get diagnosed with prediabetes or high blood sugar levels, it can often feel like quite sudden. But this isn't something that happens suddenly. It is something that happens gradually over time. It can happen relatively quickly, but generally speaking, it happens as we age, with lifestyle choices. Maybe we sleep more poorly when sleep less as we age, we exercise less as we age. Maybe just over time, the impact of our diets become apparent, and then this can happen. And this can happen to anyone. So the personal fat threshold explains why, inherently slim people, so people who look thin, and in our culture, we have this impression that slim means healthy. So supposedly healthy slim people can develop the condition alongside people living with obesity. So people who have larger pools of energy storage in their body can also develop this condition. So we all likely have our own personal fat threshold, and when we go beyond that, our body can no longer manage carbohydrates and fat effectively, and we can develop prediabetes and eventually type 2 diabetes. Okay. And we like to refer this as our tipping point. It's our body's individual level where we no longer have room to store fat or carbohydrates. So the excess energy has to go somewhere. It builds up in our internal organs, and eventually it spills into our blood. And you can imagine it like a sponge. Like a sponge, for a while, it can take the water. It can continue to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, and it can soak up the water. But eventually, the sponge can't take any more, and the water will just spill out. Kind of what's happening with our body and our blood sugar levels. So instead of this, we gain weight, we develop insulin resistance, and then we develop high blood sugar levels and prediabetes. It's not quite what happens. It can happen like this, but generally speaking, this is the more accurate view of what happens for most people. We reach our personal fat threshold. So again, this is when our body's energy storage capacity is maxed out. We then develop insulin resistance, which we'll touch on in a minute, which is when the body no longer responds to the hormone insulin. And our blood sugar levels rise over time. And they gradually rise. We develop prediabetes. It's a bit of a warning bell. And then even further along, we develop the more critical condition of type 2 diabetes, which is where the levels of blood sugar are so high that it has a severe negative impact on our health. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. We will be sending the recordings, so everyone will have an opportunity to rewatch this and understand this more. We also have these articles explaining this on our website. But if you would all like to use the chat function again, please answer this question. So, what factors do you think impact our ability to manage blood sugar? So, if we're talking about our personal fat threshold, what impacts that? What impacts our body's ability to manage energy and store fat, store carbohydrates? Is it lack of sleep, sedentary lifestyle, which is lack of activity, genetics and aging, stress, mindset, or G, all of the above? Let's see what everyone's saying. It looks like, yeah, pretty consistent. I'll give everyone a few more seconds to answer who wants to. Da, 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 da. And we're up to 742 people on the webinar. I suppose 740 with me and Lisa included, which is absolutely brilliant. Thank you all for coming. All of the above, yeah, exactly right. So for those of you who put G, all of the above, you're absolutely right. I think there's a general, again, there's like a general rhetoric, and people believe that type 2 diabetes, weight gain, obesity is all to do with diet, and it's only to do with what we eat. Of course, our diet and nutrition is incredibly important, but it's one factor out of many. Our lifestyle, sleep has an impact on how well our body manages blood sugar levels. Obviously, physical activity, so how much we move each day. It's not just about exercise, by the way, not formal exercise, but just how much we move each day. Obviously, diet. Genetics plays a crucial role. There are genetic differences in how much insulin, for example, people can release from the pancreas. Just as one example of how this can be influenced. Aging is a massive one. As we age, our body's ability to do everything declines, so it makes sense that as we age, that becomes a risk factor for developing high blood sugar. Stress or perceived stress, massive impact, but also our mindset, our mood, our mental health, anxiety, depression, or just our general mood. It has a huge impact on our body's ability to function. If you think that everything comes from the brain, because it does, everything comes from the brain. The brain is the central governor of everything we do. So if our mindset, if our mental health, our psychology isn't in a good place, then it will impact our physical function. So we can't separate, people like to think mental health, physical health, even though I just use that term, but really health should encompass everything. It's all encompassing, mental and physical, it's all the same. Okay. So yes, all of the above, diet, activity, mindset, sleep, genetics, and aging, it all has an impact. So for those of you who have questions around, well, I eat a healthy diet or I'm physically active, so why are my blood sugars high? Well, we will be delivering a webinar in a couple of weeks, looking into those things in more detail. But it's not just those things. It's not just how physically active we are or our diet. It could also be sleep. It could also be our mental health. It could also be our genetics and the fact we're aging. All of those things contribute, right? So, cool. Right. So just to summarize this first main section on the personal fat threshold. So we all have a limited capacity for storing energy in our body, both in the form of carbohydrates and fat. When we reach this limit, our body stores excess energy in our liver, in our pancreas, and other internal organs. Because these organs are absolutely crucial in our ability to manage energy and manage our blood sugar levels, this excess energy can eventually, in the form of glucose, blood sugar, it can spill out into the blood. And over time, they will continue to rise unless we make lifestyle changes. So we can develop prediabetes and then type 2 diabetes. However, before we get onto the role of insulin, I want to send hopefully a reassuring positive message. This is not guaranteed. So if you go back 20 years ago, if someone developed pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, pretty much you were just told to, eat less, exercise more. And, in 5, 10 years, you'd probably have to go on insulin and other medication to manage the condition. We know that's no longer true. We have enough evidence to show that for people, particularly with pre-diabetes, which is just slightly higher blood sugar levels, let's say, there is a lot that we can do to lower our blood sugar levels, improve our health, and avoid developing type 2 diabetes later down the line. So it can all change. Okay, so let's look at the role of insulin because we talked about managing energy in the body, and we've largely mainly talked about, fat and carbohydrates, for example. But insulin is a key energy regulator. So, as a quick recap of before we get on to the functions of insulin at the more micro level, broadly speaking, insulin is a crucial hormone in managing energy. Not just with carbohydrates, it doesn't just manage our blood sugar, and we'll talk about how it does that in a minute. It also manages our fat, so it pushes fat into our cells to store as energy. And it also has an impact on protein too. So when we consume protein, and that goes into our muscles and our other cells to form our bones and all those kinds of things, insulin's having a key role in that too. So insulin's like this master energy regulator, if you like, right? So all of the food that we eat, most of it is impacted by the hormone insulin. Okay, so how does it work? So hopefully, I'd imagine some of you at least would have heard this analogy at some point in the past. But insulin's like this key on the right-hand side. It acts like a key to open the door to the cell so that energy in the form of glucose, will focus purely on blood sugar for now, can enter the muscles. Now, why are we focusing on muscles in this analogy? Well, muscles are the largest pool, let's say, the largest available resource the body has to get rid of glucose out the blood, right? If we want to manage our blood sugar levels, focusing on the muscle is a very good thing to do because it's the largest reservoir for glucose in the body, if you like. So, when we eat carbohydrates in a meal, they're broken down into individual molecules of glucose. They enter the bloodstream, and insulin is released by the pancreas. And insulin opens the door to the cell. So then glucose can enter the muscle. And then when it's in the muscle, it can be stored as glycogen or burnt for energy. Now, this is also happening everywhere else: the brain, the liver, the heart, the gut. Every organ and cell in our body can use glucose for energy. So this isn't just in the muscles, it's happening all over our body. But we're using muscle in this analogy because it's the biggest pool. But every single cell in the human body can use glucose sugar for energy. Now, to return to what we were talking about earlier with the personal fat threshold, when we reach our personal fat threshold, we develop insulin resistance. And there is more complexity to a lot of the things we're talking about today because it can go the other way around. But to simplify things and keep it in line in terms of what happens in most circumstances, we reach that personal fat threshold, so we can no longer store energy in our adipose tissue, the fat beneath our skin, and our glycogen levels. So the stored carbohydrate is full as well, and the body's like, where's the excess energy going to go? It starts rising in the blood, and we start to develop insulin resistance where the body's cells no longer respond to insulin in the same way. As you can imagine, if you've got a house party and your house is full of people, some guests knock at the door, you might think twice about inviting them in because you're already so full. It's kind of what's happening in the body, in the muscle, in other areas of the body. There's already so much energy stored in glucose and fat that the body cells are like, we're not going to respond to insulin. But the body doesn't want to have high levels of sugar in the blood. So the pancreas will send out more insulin, so more keys into the blood, because it wants to get it out of the blood. Because energy in the form of glucose in the blood is toxic. If you go above a certain level of glucose, it's called glucose toxicity. It's just toxic to the body. So the body wants to get rid of it, wants to become stored. So more and more insulin is released, and at first it can do it. You can squeeze more guests into the party. So more insulin allows the glucose to enter the muscles and other cells of the body. However, eventually, the level of insulin resistance reaches a point where the body does not respond to insulin, and or the pancreas is no longer able to produce enough insulin to manage the blood sugar, and it remains in the blood as the body can't move it into the muscles. Cool. Okay, I hope that all makes sense. Now to a question. I've already kind of answered this, but if you'd like to put this into the chat, so true or false? True or false? This is kind of like a double negative here. Pre-diabetes can't be reversed. Is this true or is this false? I'll give everyone a few seconds to put into the chat. Excellent. So we're getting a pretty large, consistent flood of false. And I've kind of written this in a strange way because it is a double negative, but can't be reversed. But it is false because prediabetes can be reversed, as in, can we get our blood sugar levels back down into the normal range? Yes, we can. Absolutely. It is entirely possible to bring our blood sugar levels back down to normal. By introducing a healthier lifestyle, we can help our body burn off the excess energy stored in our organs, and we can burn off the excess energy in our bloodstream, and we can bring those energy levels back down to normal. And unsurprisingly, a kind of a flip reverse of the slide that we showed earlier. So how do we achieve this? It's a diet based on whole foods, so the second nature balanced plate model. It's introducing more movement, and again, it doesn't have to be extreme exercise. It doesn't have to be going to the gym for 90 minutes a day or running ultra marathons. It's just moving more, moving the muscles that we have in our body, developing a bit more muscle mass, moving it more so our body can burn off the excess energy and manage it better. But also, I was talking earlier about mental health and our psychology. So, understanding the connection between our thoughts, feelings, and our eating habits, but also the impact that our psychology can have on how our body functions is a crucial part of helping our body manage our blood sugar more and getting enough sleep. So, adequate sleep, roughly 7 to 9 hours a night, is a crucial habit to develop to help our body manage blood sugar levels better. Now, you might be thinking, right, we're going to go into all of these and explain how to get our blood sugar levels down, but that would be too much for one webinar and my voice. But on the 6th of November, so a week on Thursday, we're delivering another webinar called Preventing Type 2 Diabetes, where we'll look at these habits in more detail. So how can we actually introduce a healthier diet? What is the balance? How can we sleep better? How can we develop a more positive mindset and develop a healthy relationship with stress? And how can we maybe move more and introduce more movement to bring our blood sugar levels down? Now, to register, I know everyone's probably desperate to register, but what I would recommend doing is just adding this to your calendar for now. We will be delivering this webinar. We just haven't launched it yet. We didn't want to confuse people because we're delivering quite a few webinars yet. So we didn't want to send out too many registration links because there's quite a lot going on. But we will be sending that out tomorrow so that everyone can register. So we'll email the registration link tomorrow. But for now, put this in your calendar. We will be delivering that. We do have 1,000-person capacity, so we might have to organize a second. But yeah, it's best to register, get your registration in early to avoid disappointment, so you can attend and watch the recording. Okay, let's summarize the role of insulin in that section. Tiny typo here. I haven't bolded the I, so it looks a bit like I'm just saying insulin, but the I is there, insulin. So it acts like a key and unlocks door to our cells so glucose can move in. Now, reminder, glucose is a simple form of sugar. When we reach our personal fat threshold, insulin resistance develops. Now, insulin resistance is when the body is no longer responding to the hormone insulin, so it can't do this function that we've laid out here. The body has to produce more and more insulin to try and move the glucose out of the bloodstream and into the muscles and the other cells of the body to burn it for energy. Eventually, again, we talked about this isn't something that happens overnight. It happens gradually over time. The body can't keep up and blood sugar levels rise over time. Okay, now we've covered a lot already. I don't know what time it is actually. It looks like we're 35 minutes in. And yeah, we've covered a lot. So if any of you feel a bit lost or need a recap, like I said, we'll be sending out the recording. But yeah, let's finish with HbA1c because this is an area of confusion for many people and it is quite complicated. So now we talked about sugar. So glucose is the carbohydrate that circulates in our body and is in the blood and is often referred to simply as blood sugar because glucose is a is a form of carbohydrate of sugar. But essentially, when we say blood sugar, we mean blood glucose. It roams freely in the blood, and the blood is also known as our plasma. Now, glucose, or sugar, connects and spontaneously binds to our red blood cells, or hemoglobin. This just happens organically. And this forms what is known as glycated hemoglobin. And that just means hemoglobin with glucose bound to it. And as you can see in this image here, we've got hemoglobin, our red blood cells, glucose, as represented by these yellow dots here, and they bind to our red blood cells and form the hemoglobin or red blood cells with glucose, glycated hemoglobin. And this is what HbA1c is measuring. It is measuring how much glucose is connected to our red blood cells. And when we talk about prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, they're essentially the same thing. Our blood sugar levels exist on this continuum. So an HbA1c level of 31 or lower is nice and healthy. If you reach up to 42, you're into the pre-diabetes range where those levels of blood sugar are just starting to creep, and it's a warning sign that the body is starting to struggle with its ability to manage blood sugar and keep them lower. So it's a little warning bell. Now, as blood sugar levels rise up into the 50s and 60s, so 48 and over is considered type 2 diabetes. And as it rises and rises and rises and rises, this is essentially worsening blood sugar levels, worsening type 2 diabetes. Now, it's worsening because, like I said earlier, glucose is toxic at higher levels, not at lower levels. Our body needs it. Our body burns glucose for energy. If we don't eat carbohydrates, our liver makes glucose from other things. We won't talk about that in too much detail, but it's very important. But at too high levels, it becomes more and more toxic, let's say. It becomes more and more detrimental to our health. And over time, some very severe health consequences can come from type 2 diabetes. But we don't want to talk about that because we're all still in this range, and hopefully we can get it back down and we can avoid prediabetes, type 2 diabetes in the future. Now, in terms of HbA1c levels changing, so we get a lot of questions around, how quickly can I see HbA1c levels drop? Now, typically, because red blood cells survive for 6 to 12 weeks, this is why HbA1c is considered an average. A plasma glucose test measures the level of free glucose just randomly rolling in the body, roaming around in the blood. Now that rises and falls. Now you might have seen studies, or you might have seen TV shows or things on social media looking at people wearing CGMs and their blood sugar levels going up and down and up and down. That's the free glucose moving up and down as it's released into the blood and then brought back down by the hormone insulin. But H1C gives us this average, as you can see, over 6 to 12 weeks because of the function of glucose binding to the hemoglobin and those red blood cells surviving. So it can take 6 to 12 weeks to see a change. So let's say from today, let's say some of you start exercising a bit more, and maybe you eat a bit more protein and manage your sugar intake a little bit more. Maybe you sleep a bit more over the next 12 weeks. It might take 2 to 3 to 4 months to see those changes take effect. Cool. So the aim of our program is to help you get your HbA1c down below 42 and keep it there. So as we looked at this graph earlier, so the blood sugar levels existing on a continuum. So really, there's no difference between pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes in essence. It's just a continuum. It's just how high are your blood sugar levels? And we want them to stay below 42, ideally. Okay, so let's summarize HbA1c. Glucose, sugar, binds to the red blood cells or the hemoglobin. This is known as glycated hemoglobin, which essentially just means glucose connected to our red blood cells. Because our red blood cells survive for 6 to 12 weeks, this gives us an average blood sugar level over the past few months. HbA1c is a continuum. When it's low, we don't have type 2 diabetes, our blood sugar levels are healthy. Excuse me. When it's too high, we do. Okay, so that's all the challenging stuff for now. Now, all of you will be on our sustain phase of the program. Well, most of you, I'd imagine. Um, and our sustain phase has many courses to help you reverse your pre-diabetes, get your blood sugar levels back down to normal, and keep it there. Whether we're focusing on nutrition, exercise, stress, mindset, sleep, or motivation. For those of you looking to lose weight and hitting a weight loss plateau, this course explains that. We've also got two new courses that we released recently. One, which is essentially an extended version of this webinar. It's a 4-week course on preventing diabetes. The first week goes into understanding all we've talked about today in more detail. The second week looks at nutrition. The third week looks at sleep, exercise, and stress. The fourth week looks at the concept of habits and the practical day-to-day things we can do and how we can use the habit formation in the brain to make those sustainable changes over time. And another new course on navigating setbacks. So, like lifestyle changes, weight loss, or improving our blood sugar levels, trying to improve our sleep, whatever it is your goals are. There's no linear experience. There's no straight path to our goals. We have setbacks, we have slip ups. That's life. That's just happens. So how can we navigate those? So that's a new course there. And I can as well inform you all that the exercise course I've updated, that will be released soon. The weight loss plateaus course has also been updated. That will be released soon. And yeah, all of the other courses are also being updated. And by Christmas, January time, they should all be revamped and refreshed and updated with the latest science and the latest recommendations from the world of psychology and behavior change to help you make those changes over time. Now, how do you join these sustain courses? I hear none of you asking, or maybe all of you. So anyway, so in your app, your Second Nature app, you click on Toolbox in the bottom right-hand corner. Step 2, you just click on this tile for sustain courses. It might still say 4-week programs, depending on whether you've updated your app. And then you can just click on any of these tiles, and then you just select Start Course, and then you can choose your start date. Now, if you're already on a course, you don't like it, or you just want to change, you've done it before, you can switch. So you just rather than saying start course, it will probably just say something like switch. I can't remember exactly what it will say, but there's an opportunity to switch too. Wicked. And also, one of the amazing things about our program, and I don't think everyone appreciates the expertise that is available to them on the program. Maybe there's a preconception. I think people think that we just have AI chatbots, but there is a real human being, a nutritionist and dietitian, on the other end of the Second Nature in the app, ready to support you 5 days a week, which is absolutely incredible. To give you context, if you were to go to a dietitian or nutritionist privately, it would cost £100 to £150 an hour. The NHS has provided Second Nature and our dietitians and nutritionists and health coaches for 5 days a week for 9 months. I would highly recommend using their expertise while you have their support. And it's not just food. Believe me, our health coaches are not the food police. They're not here to judge you, they're here to help you. They don't care what your previous habits look like or what your current diet looks like or whatever whatever it is. They just want to help. That's all they're here for. So use their expertise. So if you want to message your health coach, click on the chat button at the bottom of your app. Click on your health coach chat. It might not be Amy. This is just obviously a mock-up of what our app looks like. And step 3, to send them a message. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It could be as simple as, I'm really struggling. I don't know where to start. They'll be there for you. They can help you work through it. Or I'm really struggling. It just has to be anything. Could be anything simple from, how do I make my Sunday roasts align with the balance plate model? Just whatever questions you have, send them through to your health coaches. That's what they're there for. Okay. And thank you all. 750 of you have turned out tonight. 1,500 people registered for this webinar. It's absolutely amazing. It's been a privilege to deliver it, and yeah, I'm really happy you all turned out. So thank you for coming. Now we will move on to the Q&A section. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen, and to save my voice, Lisa, I'm hoping you've got some excellent answers for some of the questions we've got in the Q&A. And yeah, thank you all. Your comments are amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm really glad everyone found that so helpful. And if everything is still a bit confusing, if you're like, that was brilliant, but I still don't quite understand it, absolutely fine. Like, we're not expecting you to be an expert in type 2 diabetes overnight because you've watched this webinar, but please use this as a stepping stone to finding out more and learning more as you go. Okay, so let's have a look at the Q&A. Now, okay, so Lisa, we last week we had the same. We had a lot of people on statins on the program. They're asking about its impact on blood sugar. All I can say is that we're not able to discuss medical conditions or other medications on this webinar, and we don't want to influence your treatment pathway. If you have questions around statins and their impact on blood sugar management, because there is a biological connection between the functions of statins and our body's blood sugar management, please speak to your GP. It's the best thing to do. Okay, right. Da, 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 da. Okay, Lisa, this is a great question that we always get asked. Okay, so a lot of people come to our program, and yeah, maybe they're on statins, but also maybe they're worried about their cholesterol levels, and they're worried also. They're concerned about our nutritional guidelines sometimes because our recommendations are to have a more balanced portion of carbohydrates, around a fistful in every meal, and that does sometimes mean that we recommend increasing the fat portions. So there's a bit more fat in the diet and there's a little bit less carbohydrate. Now, in terms of how that influences our health and our cholesterol levels, what are your thoughts there? And what should people know about this?
Yeah, this is a really, really common one we get asked a lot as coaches. So I think the important thing is just to remember that our nutrition guidelines are based around everybody consuming whole foods as much as possible. So that's our sort of go-to with any of the different food macros. So carbohydrates, fats, or protein, you're always looking to opt for the least processed. Um, that means that obviously it is going to reduce your blood sugar levels because we don't have all of that extra sort of sugar being added. But in terms of fat, again, we do recommend focusing on whole food based sources of fat. So things like olive oil are incredibly good for you. They have lots of antioxidants in them. So actually adding some olive oil to your salad is a really good idea. And then other whole food sort of sources of fat tends to be things like animal fat, oily fish, really good, full of omega-3, which is great for your brain and brain function, and yeah, dairy, that sort of thing. So throughout the program, we do recommend you choose moderate sources of fat. So we talk about adding a serving. So it's not like we're encouraging anybody to suddenly start switching over and having a predominantly fat-based diet. But yes, it's really about utilizing all of the different food groups to make sure that we can manage blood sugar levels. Fat's another one of those really powerful things that actually, when you combine with carbohydrates, really helps to lower blood sugar levels.
Mm.
The way that our balance plate works is essentially just to make sure that all the foods are paired together really effectively to make sure that you're getting all the nutrients you need.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. And I think, like you said there, it's fat really provides an excellent complement to our meals, right? One, it's delicious. So we want to enjoy our meals. It's really important. I think there's a lot of there's a big conception, right, that healthy salads are like the healthiest thing to eat, right? It's like, oh, if you go healthy, you have to eat a salad. And actually it's not the case at all. And fat provides a big part of enjoyment in our recipes, in our meals, and combining it with carbohydrates, protein, and fiber from vegetables makes us feel fuller for longer, right? So we're less likely to eat later in the day, and we will manage our blood sugar levels over time as well. Now, we've also had like on this topic, so we've had a question around the ketogenic diet, and I think this is relevant because a lot of people who do their own research, which we have on the program. People are diagnosed with pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar levels, and they maybe do a bit of online research and they see people, lowering their blood sugar levels, reversing the condition with a ketogenic diet, which for those of you who aren't familiar is a predominantly fat-based diet and very, 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 very little carbohydrate. So, Lisa, what's your perspective on that? I know you've got a really good understanding of, nutritional ketosis and that diet, but what are your thoughts on it? And aligned with the second nature balance plate model, why do we not go to that extreme?
Yeah, so it's like with anything, a diet has to be sustainable for you. So, as Robbie mentioned, it's incredibly high in fat, which when you're having to really measure food to such a specific degree and make sure that you are really, really over consuming fat, it's actually really, really hard to maintain. It means that essentially you can't go out for dinner with your friends anymore. Like it's very, very difficult to get that balance when you're eating anywhere outside of the home. In order to significantly reduce your carbohydrates down, it also means that you have to really reduce your intake of vegetables as well. Vegetables also contain carbohydrates to a much lesser extent than the complex carbohydrates, but obviously they still do contain it. So, in order to stay in what we call an officially keto in full ketosis, it means that you do significantly have to reduce that down. And that means that it's nigh on impossible to get your levels of fiber that we know are healthy. So we want to get around 30 grams of fiber a day, and it's just not very easy with a ketogenic diet. So although we do know in the short term it can be quite effective, we're just really looking for a diet that you can sustain and that is going to keep you healthy in all of those different aspects. So all of the vitamins and minerals, all of their fiber and everything else that we need. So that's why we go for a lower carbohydrate diet, so that we are enabling you to be able to choose all of those foods that are healthy for you and in a balance that is actually sustainable and also fun, so that you can still enjoy your foods, which is obviously what we're looking for.
Absolutely, absolutely, and obviously on the second nature within the recipes, right? There's some recipes that are quite high in fat and low in carbohydrates, or others where they're a little bit lower in fat and maybe there's more complex carbohydrates in there. And I think that variety is really important. It's just having that flexibility, right? It's like, is there an issue with having an omelette with cheese and vegetables and no sourdough toast? No problem at all. But then it's also fine to have scrambled eggs on toast. It's like I think that balance is really important. So yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And Lisa, in the first in your experience, you've been working with Second Nature for a very long time, but also you've been working just in this field for a really long time. And in the first couple of weeks of working with people and coaching, what are the sort of main things you find yourself supporting people on? Like, what are the key barriers and what are the main things you do to help them?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's the first one is really trying to reduce carbohydrate intake. I think especially when we go out for dinners, when we sort of socialize with others, we tend to really sort of start with a plate full of carbohydrates. So pasta, potatoes, bread-based meals. And it's really getting out of that mindset of understanding that carbohydrates are not actually the food that helps to fill us up. So a lot of the questions I get are, if I reduce my carbohydrates down, am I going to suddenly start to feel hungry? And it's surprising how quickly you actually can start to feel full with a much smaller portion when you start to swap carbohydrates for things like protein and fat, which is so much more filling. Protein takes a lot longer to digest in your body, so it's really how we then start to trigger those fullness cues. Fat's very similar, it's also really satisfying. So people notice when they first start to transition away from swapping carbohydrates with protein, actually how much fuller they get, but it can be quite a surprise to a lot of people. Um, Another one is also the effects of reducing sugar down. So we notice that if you are previously reliant on quite a lot of processed food and sugar, switching away from that can have a few sort of side effects, but they do go very quickly as your body starts to adapt. And you notice that actually, instead of being reliant on certain foods, when we do swap them out, that your energy levels increase, sleep gets better, um, mood increases. We do really notice that people start to move away from perhaps focusing on the scales as a measure of their progress, actually all of the other amazing changes that happen as well. So that's normally sort of the breakthrough eureka moments that we
Mm.
notice in the first couple of weeks.
Got you. So it's that real realization of when you introduce more protein, fat, fiber, and you actually focus, I guess, it sounds like you're focusing more on what you're adding in rather than, okay, we're gonna, maybe limit the carbohydrates a little bit. It's like, no, think about all the amazing things we can add into the diet, and then that provides much more stable, I guess, feelings of fullness and probably energy levels and things like that. And people not being fixated on food all the time because they're actually able to concentrate on other things. Uh,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
brilliant.
And that's one of the main things that we do. We try to stop removing food, we try and swap it. So it's not about trying to go without or restrict or rely on willpower. It's about finding out what actually we can add into your diet rather than just suddenly working on restriction.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. Lisa, we had this question last week as well, and I think it's really obviously really relevant for a lot of the women on our program, is the impact of menopause and an impact on women's metabolism, on their ability, on insulin resistance and insulin function, blood sugar levels, appetite, mood, all of these things. So, what are your perspectives on the impact of menopause on the body? And I guess when you are working with women going through the menopausal transition on the program, how do you, I guess, go about supporting them in that circumstance?
Yeah, this is a really, really common one, and it's just such a shame that women's health is so underrepresented in clinical trials. So we
Mm.
really do have to scratch around for research, unfortunately. But yeah, we do know that as women go through the menopause, which can be a very, very long period, it can start as early as your early 40s and it can go along for a very long time. During that period, your body essentially stops being as responsive to insulin. So, exactly like you were saying, Robbie, throughout the presentation, you essentially can be brought into this sort of area of insulin resistance. Somebody else also asked a question about aging. So, again, similar to menopause, as we age, our body does naturally become a little bit more insulin resistant. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is actually a protective mechanism. That being insulin resistant to a very low level can actually help. Having a little bit more fat storage as we get older is actually really, really protective. So your
Mm.
body naturally wants you to hold a little bit more fat as you get older. So
Mhm.
as we go through the menopause, that obviously can be quite a hindrance because we are in an area of lots of food rather than a lack of food, which is really what our body is setting us up for. But yeah, the role that estrogen plays in appetite regulation and lots of other different processes in the body does mean that we then do become less responsive to insulin. So, what I normally suggest when I'm coaching on the program is really just to really focus on all of our key advice around reducing carbohydrates. The more we can make it easier for your body to manage the carbohydrates you do consume, the more effective you will be at processing them. So it's really just about trying to think about your carbohydrate consumption, and obviously all of the other tweaks that we include as well, like different forms of exercise and that kind of thing. But yes, there's lots of different things that we can do. It's just about understanding really what that process looks like and then really optimizing the elements of the program to make it work for you.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you, Lisa. We are coming to the end. We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I'll just reiterate, I'm really sorry we can't get to all of your questions. I'm sure everyone can appreciate there's nearly 100 questions in the Q&A, and we can't answer everyone. So what I'm trying to do is merge them together and answer the ones that I know like a lot of people are talking about and that we see consistently on the program. And final one, Lisa, I think would be good because obviously it affects everyone, particularly in the UK, of our drinking culture and our social, our social lives tend to focus heavily on alcohol. So I think it would be good just to finally, just to finish off, what is the impact of alcohol? I guess, we know the impact of alcohol on our overall health, but what is the impact of alcohol specifically on our body's ability to manage blood sugar? And how does it impact, how does it impact that process and things like that?
Yeah, so alcohol actually probably impacts us in lots of different ways. So I'm sure a lot of us can relate to waking up the following morning and feeling very much more hungry after a night of drinking. So even if the effects of the alcohol consumption aren't necessarily immediate, we do notice that it will have a knock-on effect. Um, it can also impact our ability to sleep. So you might think that you sleep much better when you drink, when actually, unfortunately, that's not sort of the case. We kind of go into a bit of a low-grade coma until we wake up in the morning. And lack of sleep is another big, big driver of not only consuming more, but also probably not wanting to reach for the most healthy foods
Mm,
and to crave very energy dense foods when we've been drinking. So really the effect of alcohol for me in terms of my experience with coaching is that it's very much it has the knock-on effect the following
that's,
day.
yeah.
But it's not about giving up anything. It's just about being a little bit mindful of your intake and then maybe having a plan the day after to make sure that all of the healthy options are the easiest ones for you to grab, rather than waking up on a Sunday, your cupboards are empty, and now we're panicking and calling for a takeaway. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
mindful drinking and mindful meal planning for the following day.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Like if you know you've got a birthday or a Christmas celebration coming up, make sure your fridge is probably full of like maybe you've batch cooked and you've got something you can just put in the microwave ready to go rather than ordering out takeaway, like you said. I think
Yeah.
that's great. Thank you, Lisa. Absolutely brilliant. Really happy you came along and joined me. Now, finally, we're at 7 o'clock, team, so I'm really sorry, everybody. We won't get to answer any more questions, but I have a question for everyone who is here still. We've got 640 odd people here, which is brilliant. Now, I'd like you've all been really great in the chat, leaving, and really appreciate all your feedback. Thank you. And I'm really glad you've all found it so informative. I have two questions for all of you. One, what has been your favorite part of this webinar? And two, what would you like to see us do in the future? Because we're going to do more webinars, specifically exclusively for our NHS members. But what would you like to see us do? So, what topics are you struggling with? What would you like to learn more about? What would be most helpful for you in reducing your blood sugar over the long time? So, feel free to put your answers into the chat. I'll give everyone just a minute or two. Now, Lisa, as this is probably the first webinar you've done for a while. Um, what have you most enjoyed about this evening?
I think that seeing the feedback in the chat has been amazing. So
Yeah,
really positive, a lot of people learning new things, and also a lot of questions that have come up as we've gone through, which then you've covered. So we're clearly on the right track in terms of really understanding where people want to learn more about and what's useful. Um, and Diane at the beginning of the conversation, so she was doing chair exercises whilst watching the webinar.
brilliant.
So isn't that amazing?
That is exactly the kind of proactive mind attitude we want. It's like, if all you can do at the moment is do some chair exercises while watching a web, that's absolutely brilliant. What a good way um, to start an exercise habit. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, everyone, thank you so much to see there's loads of comments coming in. I'm going to give you another 30 seconds because so much is coming in, which is brilliant. And Lisa, one final thing. What is one thing that has surprised you about coaching at Second Nature over the past few years?
Oh wow, what has surprised me. Um, I don't know if it surprised me, but just seeing the amount of people that think that they then can't get into remission from diabetes or can't lower their blood sugar levels, and then they get a blood test and they're surprised, I think, by how quickly that happens and how effective just making a few small changes can have on
Yes.
long-term health. So yes, just seeing the responses of how amazingly everybody does is it's just such a joy.
Brilliant. Amazing. Thank you, Lisa. We will leave it there because we are 3 minutes over 7. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you all turning out and watching the webinar this evening. To confirm, I will be sending the recording to you all tomorrow. I'll also send the registration for the webinar next week, tomorrow or Thursday. That will be coming out to you. So just keep an eye on your inbox. Register straight away because we've got a limited capacity. We might have to do a second one again. But yeah, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. Cheers, Lisa, as well. See you
Thanks,
later.
everyone. Thanks, Robbie.
Bye.